One of your most recent videos that I enjoyed watching was your analysis and review of the latest Indiana Jones movie. It seemed you kind of reached in a sense, a zenith of your analysis in itself, or what Lynch might call the duck's eye, the point within the point. It seemed to me that what you were saying is that our culture is incapable of coming up with new and novel and innovative content, and it's kind of like a Tomb Raider dragging cadavers from the soil, reanimating them, and then not even respecting them. Is that the essence of your perspective on sort of mainstream movie franchises? And what do you think that tells us more broadly, if that indeed that is your perspective, Drinker?
I think that's wildly wrong, because that metaphor you just gave me would have at least been entertaining, unlike this movie. I think we are definitely stuck in a rut as a culture when it comes to just relying on the past and just like digging up old ideas, like you say, bringing back old characters, old actors, and just kind of humiliating them on screen and trying to use them as this weird springboard to launch like a new generation of characters, but they're never any good. They're always unlikable idiots who just bore people to tears. And that's the fundamental problem. We've lost the ability to create new, innovative stuff. What we do now is just reiterate the things that have been done before. And you can apply it to movies, TV shows, music, like anything. Like we're just recycling the same things we've done so many times already. It's such a sad thing to look back on. Like generations from now, they're going to look back on this time and just think of it as the time when everyone just lost their imagination. They lost their spirit of creativity.
It's very interesting that you take it to something as essential as the spirit of creativity itself. I've got young daughters, they're 5 and 6. Their favourite band is the Spice Girls. Like, we listen to the Spice Girls, and then like some other kids were getting dropped off at the school, like similar age, they were listening to the Spice Girls. There doesn't even something in the culture, which I think at the time I would have certainly regarded as a sort of a commodity, even though it had a great deal of spirit, and there's aspects of the Spice Girls that I liked, details that I certainly won't be going into right now. What I'd like to say is that it's odd that even something that's commercial, you know, we're not talking about like Joan Jett, we're talking about the Spice Girls, even like those kind of commodities aren't being replaced. And also with like Glastonbury, Elton John being the sort of closing act, it makes you wonder, well, where's it going to go? Now, do you think this is because of economics? Do you think it's because of technology? For example, it's been sort of oft stated that there isn't a new raft of movie stars coming through anymore. Like, is that because of the culture? Is that because of technology? And of course, I know those two things are inextricably linked, but what do you put it down to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last movie star that we have still active really now that's relevant is Tom Cruise. And like, he's got Mission Impossible coming out soon. That's probably going to do really well this summer. Top Gun Maverick did great last year. But yeah, like there's a problem now in movies, particularly where we don't have movie stars anymore. We have characters that people are excited to see. You know, so it particularly with comic book movies, with all this superhero stuff, it'll be a case of, hey, we're going to go and see the new Captain America movie. We're going to see the new Thor movie. We don't care about the actor that's playing him, really. It's just like the character that we're going to see. And so that then doesn't translate into a star who can sell movies, who can get people to go to the movie theater and see his latest film. You know, back when probably you and I were kids, the dominant forces at the box office were like, oh, I'm going to go and see the latest Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I'm going to see the latest Stallone movie, the latest Bruce Willis movie. All people like that. They were stars that could sell films just on their star power. We don't have that anymore. And it's the same problem with, films in general. You know, we don't want to take the risk now of inventing new things because, one, movies are massively expensive. And so they don't want to take the risk of investing $200, $300 million on something that's completely unproven. And so all they'll do is say, well, what's a surefire hit? Well, I don't know. Star Wars used to be popular. Let's do that. Indiana Jones was popular. Let's do that. You know, let's just keep recycling the things that older people remember. And two, we don't have the talented writers with really interesting life experiences that they can translate into scripts. And so they don't have the ability to create new things that are really interesting and cool.
It seems like Mark Hamill has almost been trying to publicly say that he don't like what the franchise has done to the character of Luke Skywalker, that he personally feels offended and affronted by it. Sometimes it seems to me that you're driven by a kind of a love of narrative and story, and almost like Joseph Campbell-like ideas of how a hero should function and what a story should do. I've got a few things I want to run by you. Like, I used to think, it's like a little hypothesis of mine, that American movie stars somehow embody how they regard, how that nation in particular, and let's face it, it's still the nation that defines our planet, like how it sees itself at a particular time. Like when it was Schwarzenegger and Stallone, it was a kind of rebooted 1980s America with heft and, and overt masculinity. Adam Sandler, who I did a movie with, actually, and who I think is a really interesting and brilliant performer and comic, and he, like, at a time when we were starting to learn, for example, that there weren't actually weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, Adam Sandler had this kind of, oh, shucks, I didn't mean it, like kind of mentality that aligned neatly with an America that's trying its best and erring sometimes. Now, perhaps what we have is an America that doesn't know what it's trying to sell itself anymore, trying to present a kind of ethical and moral face to the world while clearly being backed by a commodity. As you say, the motivation behind these IPs and these franchise movies is no one's willing to take a risk. You know, Matt Damon says like that, you know, you'd never get a Good Will Hunting type movies no more because no one will back a $30 million movie like that. They need to have IP behind them. But what I want to get into just before, while we're still on YouTube, before we leave YouTube, so do bear that in mind, Drinker, that we're still in a place where censorship is possible, is how do we marry together the idea that you don't want movies all to be big, buff, white movie stars? You want diversity. You want good, like as a father of daughters, I want good, strong female character. I want strong female characters in movies, right? I do, for my girls. I want them to watch films and not always to be, it's just guys and blokes. And, you know, I want there to be diversity. But how do you marry that? What do you think is the concession that should be made to make movies more, for want of a better word, more diverse? Where do you stand on that, mate?
Well, it's like, yeah, interesting points you've made there, because like when you talk about the stars of their different eras, like the 70s was like De Niro, Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, like the interesting character actors. You know, the 80s was the big buff muscle men. It was the time of like American confidence. We're going to kick ass. We're going to dominate. We're going to do awesome. The 90s, it moved into like more, ambiguous, like slightly more vulnerable heroes. The 2000s was very much reflective of the war on terror. So there was a lot of, military themed stuff. There was a lot of thrillers. There was a lot of secret agent things going on. And then, yeah, you look at now, there's nothing. I literally just said there ain't no movie stars because like the country doesn't even know what it is now. It's in a conflict of identity. So I think it's a self-evident point of like, it doesn't even know what it wants to be anymore. So that's kind of really sad to see, because we always, you know, as a Brit, I always looked up to America as like the model of the world. Like this is the country that leads us, the free world. But yeah, when it comes to marrying what you talked about there, like the rather than just having straight white guys as like the movie stars, how do we include people of different genders, ethnicities, all that stuff? I guess what I would say, hey, we did it 20, 30, 40 years ago. We just didn't make such a big deal out of it like we have to do now. And that's the thing that annoys people. That's the thing that turns people off. When you make the identity of the main character, the main actor, the sole focus of everything, people are just like, well, why are you making such a big deal of this? Why should I care about this? They used to just do it without having to make a big deal out of it. When we talk about the great female characters in cinema, we have characters like Ellen Ripley. She was an alien from the 70s. That's before I was even born. They got this right. You've got Sarah Connor from the 80s. Again, fantastic action hero, fantastic flawed character, really interesting. You had Trinity from The Matrix from the 90s. Like they got all this stuff right. They just didn't feel the need to make that the sole focus of these characters. They were interesting characters first and foremost, whether they were female, whether they were women, whether they were black, white, whatever, it didn't matter. That the main focus was that they were a well-written character. That's the difference. That's what we can't do now.
Stay free with Russell Brand. See it first on Rumble.